Hi everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into our webinar on direct student expenses. My name is Shelley Hughes and I am a finance manager at EdOps. You'll also be hearing from my colleague Michael Watts in a few of the webinars. My colleague Vera Krimnis was also deeply involved in the creation of this content. The webinars available in this series are on food service fees, student recruitment, contracted instruction, student transportation, and contracted special education instruction. We hope that you will visit all the webinars to learn more about those spending categories. This intro webinar will tell you about how we got the data for these webinars, why we chose to focus on direct student expenses in general, and the particular categories within direct student expenses. Finally, and most importantly, we'll talk about how to make informed, strategic decisions within direct student expenses. At EdOps, there are two principles that we highly value. The first is data-informed decision-making. We want to make sure that you have all the information you need in order to make the best financial and operational decisions for your school. The second is data privacy. We will always protect your individual school data. In order to balance these two values, we decided to do a sector-wide analysis to bring you meaningful insights while also protecting the data of individual schools. We used fiscal year 18 data from all of our DC EdOps schools, and we aggregated and anonymized that data. We took additional scrutiny whenever an individual school could be easily identified in a chart or a graph, to remove that individual data point while maintaining the overall trend. So why did we decide to focus on direct student expenses in this analysis? The pie chart on this page shows that the average school's spending on key spending categories. Spending on staff and occupancy are the biggest categories. Those categories are big and hairy. They have been addressed in previous EdOps labs and they will be addressed in future labs, but they will not be addressed directly in these webinars. You can also see that student expenses is a large portion of overall spending. These expenses tend to be incredibly variable and easy to change from year to year, sometimes even mid-year. One change in a direct student expense category can result in a positive net income margin for 1 year's budget. So these are important areas that you can really influence year to year with your budgets. The areas that we focused on for direct student expenses represented a large portion of the overall budget. You can see that these webinars address the top 3 categories in spending in terms of average % revenue. We also wanted to focus on areas with large variability. For example, contracted instruction fees could represent almost 6% of your total revenue, or less than 1%, which provides a lot of room for potential savings. And finally, we wanted to focus on the spending categories which influence the most schools. The purpose of these webinars is to help you make the best strategic decision for your school within each spending category. There are 6 key inputs to making the best strategic decision. I'll talk about each of these key inputs with examples from food service fees. The first is consideration of your school's mission and vision. In terms of food service, is a key mission of your school to teach students about healthy eating, and therefore your food service vendor helps you deliver on that mission? Or otherwise, do you just need your students to eat a good and healthy meal every day so that they can get back to learning? That will help you decide how much time and energy to invest in your food service costs. The second key input into a strategic decision is considerations besides cost. For food service, you'll want to consider the quality of the food and the quality of the service. Do your kids never eat the food because it tastes awful? Is your vendor late every day, forcing you to order pizzas? The third input is related to that second one we just talked about, but this is actually data and those considerations, like a Yelp type review of the service or another customer's opinion on the taste. The fourth input is understanding the cost drivers for this category. For food service, the cost driver is most often that per meal price in your contract, the number of meals you're ordering, and any other expenses like kitchen equipment or servers. The fifth input to consider is the predictability of those costs. For food service, is your school in a steady state and you know roughly how many meals you will order next year? Or are your school's demographics or enrollment numbers changing in a way that makes those order numbers harder to predict? Finally, the input that your schools rarely have access to and which we will be providing to you in these webinars is financial benchmarking data. All of our webinars will show you what schools are spending so that you can calibrate if you are making the right operational and financial decision for your school. We'll also show you a few simple tools using that benchmarking data to help guide your decision making. Please note that if you came to these webinars hoping for exact answers on how to spend your money, you'll be disappointed. However, if you came to them for helpful data and discussion questions to guide your decisions, you will emerge a happy customer. Thanks again for viewing our webinars on Direct Student Expense Deep Dives. The slide in front of you has some key questions to consider as you watch each webinar. These questions are also available separately where you found the link to this webinar. The questions are all related to the key inputs needed to make a high-quality decision that we previously discussed. We hope you will keep these questions in mind while making the right strategic decision for your school in each spending category. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar.